bystanders, as Mike mentioned, most of them come up nice and easy and settle on the bumper.
To tell the story of one of the wildest, most absurd, and truly unhinged creations in drag racing history, we have to start with the people who had the sheer audacity to build it. This was the 1960s, a golden age of horsepower, speed, and questionable engineering decisions. If something had wheels, someone, somewhere, was trying to strap more engines to it. And nobody embodied that spirit better than Hurst Performance. Before we get started, make sure you are subscribed, because we've got more videos just like this heading your way.
Ladies and gentlemen, how about a full 30?
By the mid-1960s, Hurst was already a powerhouse in the high-performance automotive world. They had built a name with industry-leading shifters, transmissions, and engineering stunts that blurred the line between marketing and mechanical insanity. They weren't just making products, they were making headlines. They had already built the legendary Hurst Hemi under glass, a barracuda that could pull a full quarter-mile wheel stand. But that wasn't enough. They wanted something bigger, something even crazier. The idea? Take a 1966 Oldsmobile 442, strap in not one, but two supercharged 425 cubic inch Oldsmobile Phoeve 8S, and send power to all four wheels. This wasn't just going to be another drag car, it was going to be a smoke-belching, tire-destroying, mind-bending, all-wheel drive burnout machine. The goal was never about winning races, it was about putting on a show. Hurst understood that drag racing was as much about spectacle as it was about speed, and they set out to build a car that would leave a lasting impression. Hurst wasn't messing around. They wanted a spectacle, and they were going to build it from the ground up. The car was powered by two identically built 425 cubic inch Oldsmobile V8s, each force-fed by a 671 GMC supercharger, the same type used on high-performance dragsters of the era. Each engine was built to withstand extreme abuse, producing well over 1,000 horsepower each. Each engine had its own B&M hydrostick automatic transmission, meaning the driver had to control two separate gearboxes at the same time. This was uncharted territory, as no driver had ever attempted to race a car with independent front and rear powertrains. Power was sent to all four wheels through custom-built drivelines and differentials, making it one of the first ever all-wheel drive drag racers. Unlike modern AWD systems, this one was purely mechanical, meaning any slight variation in power delivery between the engines could turn the car into a handful. It rolled on four massive 10-inch wide drag slicks, which meant one thing: smoke. A lot of smoke. The entire car was bathed in gold metal flake paint, making it impossible to ignore. Even standing still, it looked like a rolling supernova. Everything about the Hurst Harryolds was extreme, from its raw horsepower to its engineering challenges. The first time the Hurst Harryolds hit the strip, nobody was ready for what they saw. Instead of the traditional rear-wheel drive burnout, the car lit up all four tires at once. The result was a cloud of smoke so thick, spectators could barely see the car as it launched. And the run itself? Absolute chaos. Since the front and rear engines were completely independent, they never wanted to cooperate. The car constantly fought itself, shaking violently, fishtailing at high speeds, and behaving more like a runaway train than a purpose-built dragster. The driver had to carefully balance throttle input between the two engines, a task that required an insane level of concentration and skill. If one engine produced slightly more power than the other, it could cause the car to veer off course violently. This meant that every pass was a white-knuckle ride, with the driver fighting to keep the car straight while trying to avoid being engulfed in his own smoke cloud. But that was the whole point. This car wasn't built for winning races. It was built for blowing minds. It wasn't about setting ET records. It was about sheer, tire-melting entertainment. And the fans? They loved it. The evolution. When two engines weren't enough, most people would have stopped there. Most people would have looked at a twin-engine, all-wheel drive drag car and thought, yeah, that's probably enough. But Hurst wasn't most people, so in 1967 they built another one. And this time, they doubled down. Instead of two engines, it now had four. Instead of one transmission per engine, it now had four separate gearboxes. power was now sent to each individual wheel, creating the world's first four-engine, four-wheel drive dragster. At this point, the Hurst Harryolds had evolved into something completely ridiculous, and yet somehow it still wasn't enough. The pinnacle of insanity. 5 engines. Because why not? By 1968, Hurst had officially crossed the threshold from mechanical brilliance into absolute madness. For reasons unknown, but probably involving beer and a dare, Hurst engineers decided that 4 engines weren't enough, so they added a 5th. But this wasn't just any engine. It was a supercharged nitromethane-fueled Hemi, mounted in the trunk. It had one job: to make more smoke. That's it. It didn't drive the wheels. It didn't add speed. It was just a rolling fog machine, strapped to a drag car that already looked like a mechanical fever dream. And if that wasn't enough, they also chromed everything. Because of course they did. The final form of the Hurst Harryolds was a gold-plated monster with 5 screaming engines, 4 smoking tires, and the aerodynamics of a refrigerator. It was a machine built purely for chaos, and it delivered every single time it hit the track. By the end of the 1960s, drag racing had started to evolve. Tire technology improved, making all-wheel drive unnecessary. Funny cars emerged, setting records with single-engine setups. Multi-engine builds became too unpredictable, too dangerous, and too expensive. The Hurst Harryolds became more of a sideshow attraction than a true competitor, and eventually, it disappeared from the strip altogether. But that wasn't the end. In 2014, a group of passionate builders did something unthinkable. They built a perfect replica of the original Hurst Harryolds. They recreated the gold paint, the massive slicks, and the twin-engine drivetrain. They brought it back to modern exhibition events, giving new generations a chance to see the insanity firsthand. And most importantly, it still burns all 4 tires at once, just like it did in the 60s. Legacy. The most unhinged drag car ever? So what do we make of the Hurst Harryolds today? It never won a championship. It never set an ET record. It wasn't the fastest, the quickest, or the most efficient. But none of that mattered. Because for a brief moment in drag racing history, someone asked, how many engines can we cram into one car? And instead of stopping at 1, they stopped at 5. The Hurst Harryolds wasn't a dragster. It was a spectacle, a showpiece, and a rolling monument to mechanical excess. And in that, it succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more insane drag racing history.